Mingshi shook his head helplessly and said, "Old eighth, don't blame me for this. Don't worry, I'll try to be as merciful as I can." Zhu Honggong wanted to cry when he looked at his little junior sister. Mingshi held Zhu Honggong in place as a series of beatings were carried out. Wails that resembled squeals resounded throughout the evil sky pavilion that day. Pan Zhong had to look away. His heart was shaking from this. This is what you meant by being merciful? It seems like you're giving it your all. Ding! Punish the 8th disciple, Zhu Honggong. Reward, 100 merit points. The beating ended. Mingshi was pleased. He waved his hand and brought Zhu Honggong to the Cave of Reflection. "Brother Pan?" Zhou Jifeng walked over from afar with his sword on his back. "Brother Pan, what's wrong? You look sick. Are you sick?" Zhou Jifeng walked up to Pan Zhong. Pan Zhong's eyes were wide as he mumbled, I think I'm in trouble." Meanwhile, in the hidden chamber of the evil sky pavilion, Lu Zhou went into his heavenly writings comprehension state for a while. After he was done, he felt invigorated and opened his eyes. At the same time, he heard the notification for the reward from punishing Zhu Honggong. He looked at the merit points on the system dashboard gain. "I'm still more than 1,000 points short from being able to afford the 7-star soul avatar. Master, Hua Wudao requests an audience." Little Yuaner's voice rang from outside. "All right." Lu Zhou rose to his feet slowly and exited the hidden chamber, making his way to the great hall. Hua Wudao was standing respectfully in the great hall. After a short wait, he saw Lu Zhou walking slowly toward him. "Greetings, Pavilion Master." Hua Wudao bowed and saluted. "Have you thought things through?" Hua Wudao nodded. "I have." "Very well. I'm merely curious. With all its treasures, why does the evil sky pavilion need the sable magnolia?" Hua Wudao was puzzled. "To open up a person's sea of qi," Lu Zhou answered honestly. Lu Zhou's honesty took Hua Wudao slightly aback. Hua Wudao sighed and shook his head. "To tell you the truth, the Yun sect only has one sable magnolia. We'll need at least 2 magnolias to open up a person's sea of qi. Sable magnolias are extremely rare. There are not more than 5 in Great Yan. It won't be enough with just 1. No matter whose sea of qi had to be opened, they would need at least 2 sable magnolias. That's why I need 2. Lu Zhou's words were direct and frank. "This is extremely important. I've sent word to the Yun sect's elders. They will discuss this soon," Hua Wudao said. Lu Zhou nodded and said, "Tell the Yun sect that my patience has its limits. I will have the sable magnolias no matter what." When Hua Wudao heard this, he bowed and said, "I'll mediate as best I can. I'll return to you with an answer within a month." All right. A month was an acceptable duration for Lu Zhou. Lu Zhou's strength and cultivation base were relatively weak. If he did not have earned merit points, he would have stayed on Golden Court Mountain and not leave. Recovering his cultivation base was his greatest priority. If it had been Ji Tiandao, he would not have waited for a single day, let alone a month. Lu Zhou was different. He was not lacking in time. A month passed by in a blink of an eye. During the entire month, Lu Zhou spent his time disciplining his disciples and comprehending the heavenly writing. His accumulated merit points finally breached the 15,000 mark. Within the Great Hall, Lu Zhou stared at his merit points on the system dashboard. He muttered hesitantly, "Should I buy an avatar or attempt lucky draws?" If he attempted the lucky draws, there would be risks. If he purchased an avatar, he would spend all the merit points he had painstakingly saved. It made him feel insecure to not have any merit points at all. After considering it for some time, Lu Zhou shook his head. He decided to make a decision after he earned more merit points. After all, he could buy the avatar at any time, and he was not experiencing any obstacles in his cultivation. At this moment, Hua Wudao and Mingshi walked into the great hall. "Greetings, Pavilion Master." "Greetings, Master." Lu Zhou's gaze fell on Mingshi and Hua Wudao. Hua Wudao's cultivation base was in the nascent divinity tribulation realm. Although he tried his best to conceal his aura, He could not fool Lu Zhou. When he recalled that Hua Wudao had gained the 9th script under Wizard's influence the other day, he asked, "Did you have a breakthrough?" Hua Wado was shocked. His eyes widened as he looked at Lu Zhou, who was seated up high incredulously. He had been tending to his injuries every day throughout the past month. After battling the 10 shamans, he fought Sword Saint Luo Shursan for a long time as well. Under Wizard's auspicious chi, the knot he had been suppressing for 20 years had been undone while his injuries healed. However, no one should know that he had sprouted another leaf. If he concealed his cultivation base, he should appear to be a 3- or 4-leaf cultivator. He did not expect Lu Zhou to see through him so easily. How could he not feel shocked? When Mingshi Yin, Duanmu Sheng, and Little Yuan heard this, expressions of shock appeared on their faces as well. "Congratulations, Elder Hua." "Congratulations, Elder Hua." Duanmu Sheng was slightly envious. Nevertheless, he respected an expert like Hua Wudao. He cupped his fist and said, "Congratulations, Elder Hua." Hua Wudao waved his hands and said, "Thank you all for your kind words. If it weren't for Wizard's magic, I wouldn't have been able to undo this knot that had been in my heart for 20 years. At the end of the day, I'd still have to thank the Pavilion Master for this. Pavilion Master, thank you." When he finished speaking, he kneeled respectfully. Nobody stopped him. In the Evil Sky Pavilion, Lu Zhou had every right to be thanked in this way by him. Perhaps it was due to the length of time Lu Zhou had spent here after his transmigration. He had gotten used to being the Evil Sky Pavilion Master. For this reason, he was not flustered nor uncomfortable by Hua Wudao's display of gratitude. He remained calm. "Stand up and speak." Lu Zhou waved his arm calmly. Hua Wudao stood up. "7-leaf?" Lu Zhou asked. The Eye of Truth merely revealed his realm. He could only gauge the number of leaves from his aura. Since he was certain that Hua Wudao had sprouted another leaf, he wanted to confirm it right now. Hua Wudao nodded. His eyes suddenly brightened. 100 Tribulations Insight. 100 Tribulations Insight avatar that was 7 feet tall appeared behind Hua Wudao. A spinning, 7-leaf golden lotus blossomed under its feet. 6 compatible seal. Hua Wudao lowered himself into a stance. The yin-yang trigram appeared under his feet. With its black and white halves, the Taiji 8 trigrams was dazzlingly bright. Shortly after, heaven, earth, life, death, water, fire, being, non-being, separation. The 9 scripts rose and revolved around Hua Wudao. The 9 scripts 6 compatible seal. Mingshi Yin and Little Yuan were awestruck by this. Duanmu Sheng, however, seemed excited. He was clearly itching to leap forward and spar with Hua Wudao at this moment. His grip on the Overlord spear tightened. "Third senior brother, you've been left in the dust," Mingshi Yin said with a smile. "Although Elder Hua has gained his 7th leaf, one day I'll be sure to break the 6 compatible seal," Duanmu Sheng said confidently. "Don't forget, you have the Overlord spear with you, but Elder Hua has none. Talk about hitting where it hurts." Duanmu Sheng glared at Mingshi Yin. "Since the difference in strength between Elder Hua and I is so wide, I have to trouble you to be my sparring partner for the following month. 4th junior brother." Mingshi Yin merely wanted to tease Duanmu Sheng. Who knew his mouth would bring calamity upon him? He was truly speechless. Hua Wudao shook his head and said, "Although Duanmu Sheng only has 2 leaves, he's capable of going up against 4 and even 5-leaf opponents. He's far more talented than I am. Youth is wealth, as they say. I've only managed to gain another leaf after 20 years. I think Duanmu Sheng will surpass me in a few years. There's no need to doubt that." Who knew if his words were just flattery? However, it was definitely pleasing to the ears. Upon hearing this, Duanmu Sheng had a proud expression etched on his face. "Elder Hua, I didn't expect you to think so highly of Duanmu Sheng." Lu Zhou was surprised. In his opinion, among his disciples, Duanmu Sheng was the least talented and had the worst insight. He had attributed Duanmu Sheng's huge improvement to being freed from Ji Qindao suppression. It had to be mentioned that Mingshi Yin had entered the nascent divinity tribulation realm a long time ago. Zhou suspected the rascal, Ming-Shi was concealing his strength on purpose again. Perhaps he had already sprouted 2 or 3 leaves. Hua Wudao nodded. I frequently spar with Duan Mushang. His fighting style is tough and enduring. His attacks are forceful and decisive. I've never met such an opponent before. Duan Mushang was starting to feel embarrassed by all the compliments. He cupped his fist and said, "You're too kind, Elder Hua." When she saw everyone's cultivation base making steady progress, Liu Yuan pouted. She felt slightly annoyed. However, without a sea of qi, she could not enter the nascent divinity tribulation realm. Against a nascent divinity tribulation realm cultivator, the divine court realm and below were as insignificant as ants. Regardless of how powerful she was as a divine court realm cultivator, she could never defeat a nascent divinity tribulation realm cultivator. To a certain extent, the nascent divinity tribulation realm was the true beginning of one's cultivation path. Zhou stroked his beard and said, "Back to the main topic." Hua Wudao waved his hand. His 100 tribulations insight and 6 compatible seal disappeared. Fortunately, Hua Wudao did not request for a sparring session right there, and then Zhou was not sure he was supposed to use a Thunder Blast card under those circumstances. It would be a great loss if he accidentally killed this powerful subordinate of his. Hua Wudao said, "The Yun sect has written back yesterday. They are willing to exchange the Sable Magnolia for Ding Fanqiu." Zhou nodded in satisfaction. At least the people of Yun sect were tactful. At this moment, Hua Wudao added, "However, they have an additional condition." "What is it?" "Ding Fanqiu is enough. They're demanding for a heaven-grade weapon." Hua Wudao's voice seemed to falter as he said this. It felt as though he was speaking on the Yun sect's behalf. This was the Evil Sky Pavilion after all. Nobody could guarantee that the pavilion master would not be angered when he heard this. Zhou's expression appeared calm. It was impossible for his wizened face to show as many expressions as the younger generation after all. Ming-Shi said, "Their greed knows no end. The Evil Sky Pavilion is graceful enough to strike a deal with them, and they dare to demand a heaven-grade weapon? Do you know how precious heaven-grade weapons are?" Clearly, the Yun sect felt that Ding Fanqiu's worth was too low. That was why they came up with a second demand. Although Ding Fanqiu was a 5-leaf elite, in their eyes, Ding Fanqiu was not worth a Sable Magnolia. I know how precious heaven-grade weapons are. In fact, I don't recommend trading with them, Hua Wudao said, seemingly out of character. Ming-Shi was also surprised by this. He said, "You're no longer worried about Ding Fanqiu?" "Although I do feel guilty about this, I know my place," Hua Wudao replied. "Master, this is related to little junior sister's future. It would be appropriate for you to make the decision." Ming-Shi said as he looked at Zhou. Little Yuana remained silent, but an expectant look could be seen in her eyes. Zhou's disciples knew he owned many weapons. There was a rumor that Ji Tiandao had a fortuitous encounter and managed to obtain many treasures and weapons. This was how he had raised his villainous disciples into becoming so terrifying. The Yun sect knew about the rumors, therefore. They wanted to use this chance to obtain a weapon. Moreover, they could also improve their relationship with the Evil Sky Pavilion at the same time. Even if the Evil Sky Pavilion were to refuse, at worst, the status quo would remain the same. It would not affect the Yun sect much. It had to be said that the Yun sect had planned this out well. Zhou said, "I have many weapons, but that doesn't mean I'll give them away easily." Hua Wudao was not surprised. He cupped his fist and said, "I'll inform the Yun sect about this as soon as possible. Since the Yun sect is unwilling to surrender the Sable Magnolia, I'll personally go there and retrieve it myself," Zhou said. Hua Wudao stiffened when he heard Zhou's words. Based on the situation, if Zhou intended to go to the Yun sect to retrieve the Sable Magnolia from the Yun sect, there was no doubt that Hua Wudao would be the one to lead them there. How could he do something like this? He would die of shame. "You're dismissed," Zhou said with finality. Hua Wudao cupped his fists and remained silent. However, Ming-Shi chimed in, "Master, this is a great idea. To be honest, I haven't gone robbing in a long time. If this goes on, my ranking on the blacklist will surely drop. Impudent! Zhou raised his voice. Mingshi Yin trembled in fright. He fell to his knees immediately and said, I've misspoken. His mouth had landed him in trouble again. Little Yuan said, Master, I no longer want the sable magnolia. I don't believe that I must rely on it to open up my sea of qi. Zhou turned to look at Xiao Yuan and said, Are you sure? Of course, Little Yuan said with a smile. After all, I have you to protect me, Master. Little girl. Zhou's expression was stern as he said, You have exceptional talents. It's a shame if you can't enter the nascent divinity tribulation realm. The sable magnolia is a heaven and earth treasure that can help you open your sea of qi. You're growing up, and I can't protect you forever. Naturally, he could not say he was weak, and he would need her protection, could he? Little Yuan was moved upon hearing these words. She said with a pout, You won't die so soon, Master. Little Yuan clearly meant well, but somehow her words sounded wrong. Meanwhile, on the sword altar in Yun sect, the Yun sect had 8 holy altars of cultivation. The sword altar was the least populated. This was because the sword altar belonged to a single person, the sword saint Luo Shisan. The Yun sect initially had 7 holy altars. The general workers, outer disciples, inner disciples, and the backbone of the sect were arranged to go to the altars. However, the sword altar was the only place that was specially built for Luo Shisan. Luo Shisan was dedicated to attaining great heights with his sword techniques. He also accepted a handful of disciples. Apart from the disciples who looked after the sword altar and the disciples from the other altars who came here as apprentices, there was nobody else. At this moment, black smoke rose from a huge incense cauldron in the center of the sword altar. It's been almost a month since Master has gone into cultivation, in seclusion. His injuries should be healed by now. Wu Dao didn't wound the Master. Master's merely trying to recover his cultivation base. He could have recovered his cultivation base in 7 days. Why would he need to stay in seclusion for so long? I have many things about sword techniques that I'd like to ask him. The Master has said that someone will come and spar with him. He wants to be in peak condition when that time comes. Who is it? The Master seems quite wary. If the opponent is really that powerful, all we have to do is move back to the main altar. The Master said that we can't always run away when the going gets tough. The disciples were discussing this intently. They did not notice a green-clad man walking in the air toward them. The green-robed swordsman easily passed through the layers of barriers and wards. He finally came to a halt and hovered above the sword altar. Who's that? A disciple who saw the green-robed swordsman was frightened out of his wits. The other disciples drew their swords at the swordsman as though he was a powerful enemy. Their opponent was far stronger than they could ever imagine, since he was capable of breezing through the barriers and wards and appearing without anyone noticing. The green-robed swordsman spoke gently. There's no need to be flustered, everyone. I have an appointment with the sword saint. Can you announce my arrival to him? The disciples sighed with relief. Fortunately, this green-robed swordsman was not an enemy. Sword Saint Luo Shisan had been famous for a long time. It was not surprising his friend was such an elite. Oh, you're a friend of our master. Please wait for a moment. Senior, I'll inform my master now. Thank you. The disciple ran to the place where Luo Shisan was cultivating in seclusion. A surge of powerful primal chi blasted the door away. Several energy blades shot out from within. Whoosh! 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 The energy blades flew to the sword altar and rose into the air toward the horizons. The disciples were flustered. The energy blades were targeted at the green-robed swordsman. Bam! 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 The green-robed swordsman seemed to be taking this easily. A wall of energy appeared before him, keeping the energy blades at bay. In just a blink of an eye, the energy blades vanished into thin air. Sword Saint Luo Shisan stepped out of the room and flew into the air with his hands on his back. Master! Master! The disciples greeted him. Luo Shisan ignored them. He rose all the way up to spot a few dozens of meters away from the green-robed swordsman before he came to a halt. "You've come." As the green-robed swordsman looked at Luo Shirshan, who was slightly old but unmistakably an elite, a faint, satisfied smile could be seen on his face. "The current you are acceptable. This will be interesting. I thought that you'd be too afraid to come. Although there aren't many Yun sect cultivators in the Sword Altar, this isn't a place any scoundrel can easily trespass upon. Aren't you worried that I might have laid a trap for you? I'll just have to kill you another time, is all." Luo Shirshan nodded and said, "I've been in the cultivation world for a long time. I don't have to stoop so low. I'm different from the likes of you, who's from the fiend path after all. If there's a fight, I would fight fairly." "That's good." Luo Shirshan did not dare to let his guard down against the seemingly casual green-robed swordsman. He cupped his fist respectfully and declared with a loud voice, "The Yun sect Sword Altar's first seat, Luo Shirshan, is here to fight as promised. Yu Shangrong." The green-robed swordsman smiled and cupped his fist perfunctorily. When he spoke his name, his voice was soft and light. However, it resounded in the Sword Altar. The disciples on the Sword Altar were under the impression that their master and the green-robed swordsman were exchanging greetings. However, when they heard the green-robed swordsman's name, it was as though they had been struck by a bolt of lightning as they stood rooted to their spots. Yu Shangrong was a name that was capable of taking away one's courage. Yu Shangrong, the Evil Sky Pavilion's second disciple, a skilled swordsman who loved to challenge various elites. He was also a renowned villain who would kill another person over the slightest disagreement. He was given the moniker Sword Devil. The disciples did not expect this polite and humble swordsman to be the infamous second disciple of the Evil Sky Pavilion, Yu Shangrong. The young juniors used to hear stories about the villains. They were under the impression that all the villains looked menacing and evil. They thought they would be able to recognize the villains if they ever met one. This green-robed swordsman. Who would have known he was a sword devil? One of the disciples finally reacted and said in a hushed tone, "Send word to the main altar. Tell the elder to come and kill the sword devil." However, he had barely finished speaking when Luo Shirshan waved his arm and sent a palm seal over. Smack! It hit the disciple mercilessly on the cheek. He did a flip in the air before he fell limply to the ground. His face was red and swollen. Silence descended on the Sword Altar. Luo Shirshan said indifferently, "I said I want a fair fight." Yu Shangrong merely maintained a faint smile on his face. Nary a ripple could be seen in his eyes. He had never taken notice of small fries. "Whenever you're ready." Luo Shirshan gestured with his right hand with his palm facing upward. There was a flash from the incense cauldron in the center of the Sword Altar. A sword gleamed and flew into Luo Shirshan's hand. It was a peak Earth-grade weapon. Yu Shangrong remained indifferent. The sword was not worthy of his attention after all. Luo Shirshan could sense Yu Shangrong's disregard, and he was naturally offended. He waved his arms. The sword suddenly split into 10. The 10 swords were wrapped in dense energies as they resonated in the air. The disciples on the Sword Altar seemed excited when they saw this. All of them felt privileged to be able to witness a fight between their master and the Sword Devil. This was different from 13 swords. The energy blades were merely formed by condensed primal chi. These 10 swords, however, had swords serving as conduits. They were much more powerful than the 13 swords. The importance of a weapon was once again made clear. Everyone was staring at the 10 swords. Sword Saint Luo Shirshan scoffed. The 10 swords followed his command as they shot toward Yu Shangrong's face in random movements. The surge of energy formed a strong wind, lifting Yu Shangrong's hair. At this moment, Yu Shangrong still wore a gentle smile on his face. He looked at Luo Shirshan with his arms crossed. The 10 swords buzzed and were instantly upon him. Bzzz. A powerful surge of primal chi formed a wall that blocked the 10 swords. Yu Shangrong was still hovering in his original spot with his arms crossed. The long red sword on his back was waiting for his instructions silently. However, Yu Shangrong did not seem to have the intention to attack. Luo Shirshan said in a deep voice, "You're too careless." The 10 swords split again. There were now 20 swords. Luo Shisan could control 13 energy blades at best, but with a weapon, he could increase the number of blades he could control. The 20 swords stabbed against the wall with an earth-shattering force. Bam! 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 Yu Shangrong was still unmoved. He stood there calmly, as steady as a mountain. The energy that wrapped around the 10 swords merged and formed a turbulent flow above the sword altar. Unfortunately, regardless of how Luo Shirshan attacked, Yu Shangrong dealt with Luo Shirshan's attacks calmly and easily. The energy blades increased in number around Luo Shirshan. They were now densely packed together and looked like a wave of swords. In a battle of swords, the factor that determined the outcome of the battle usually depended on one's ability to control energy blades. In other words, it was the ability to condense primal chi into energy. For opponents with similar strength, the amount of their primal chi was the manifestation of the profoundness of their cultivation base in a battle of attrition. Naturally, the main objective was extremely simple. Regardless of how flashy an attack might seem, the goal was to defeat and kill the opponent. Finally, Yu Shangrong's wall of energy was being pushed back by Luo Shirshan's vigorous and relentless attacks. Even so, Yu Shangrong was still standing with his arms crossed and did not retaliate. To an expert who bore the title of Sword Saint, this was a humiliation. Luo Shirshan rose higher and joined his palms together. He recalled his 10 swords, and they merged into one. With his palms joined and raised, the sword hovered above him,